Hi, my name is Savannah Henderson. I'm a Presidential Honors Senior, and today I'm here to present my senior research project, which was a literature review over organizational culture, the missing puzzle piece. Organizational culture covers a lot of topics, and the research over it is extremely extensive and it's gone on for decades. The purpose of my literature review is to combine a lot of that data and figure out what a lot of people are agreeing on and bring it to one place so we can talk about things like what is organizational culture, how to create organizational culture, and what's a good one, what leads to having a bad culture, as well as the risks and costs of implementing organizational culture. And I think it's also important to take different research results across industries regarding organizational culture and compare them. Now, what is organizational culture? Despite all of the work that's gone into understanding it, the only aspect researchers seem to agree on is that there's no one definition of culture. Many people have different organizational culture ideals, what it encompasses, and how it impacts their organizations. Though some researchers arrive at similar conclusions of culture, none of them are quite the same. Simply examining the Latin root can provide a lot of helpful insight into this concept. Culture, or cultura, means to the tending of soil. This quote paints an intriguing image for both researchers and human resources professionals concerned with creating the best environment and culture for their employees. Organizational culture has also been described as a pattern of basic shared assumptions. It represents the shared beliefs and values that organization projects and the members share. Organizational culture is a subject that's difficult to fully understand due to its complex nature and intangibility. I'd like to think that if organizational culture existed in the time of the ancient Greeks as we know it today, Socrates would have a confounding discussion with a room full of students trying to explain what culture is, and not in terms of the results it produces, which is very easy to see, and we see that all the time, but what it is in terms of words, such as he might have done with justice or virtue. I think the results would be some very disgruntled students, and I think we kind of see that today with researchers trying to figure out what organizational culture is. Now, some have tried to explain culture as a metaphor, comparing it to machines, political systems, and even the human brain to make culture more comprehensible to what we have physically in front of us. Culture's also has been broken down into different dimensions, and as you can see on this table, here are three common ways to break culture into different dimensions. First, we'll look at the three levels of organizational culture. This is split into artifacts, espoused beliefs and values, and basic underlying assumptions. Artifacts consist of an organization's written documents, such as policies and procedures created, implemented, and maintained by the Human Resources Department to drive desired conduct among all organizational levels from the CEO down to the frontline employee. The espoused beliefs and values of an organization are the values of a company and their mission and vision statement. The basic underlying assumptions are what everybody believes to be accurate within an organization without physical proof, such as if you do something bad, there will be consequences. Now let's look at the Denison model. The Denison model is commonly used when doing research over culture regarding educators. These dimensions are broken down into involvement, consistency, adaptability, and mission. Involvement rates the level of participation and initiative taken by all organization employees. Consistency refers to how employees within an organization acquire and share the company's values and beliefs. The adaptability examines the organization's ability to adapt to change both inside and outside the company. Mission represents how clear an image of the organization's direction is to the employees. Finally, we'll talk about the competing values framework, and this model is a little different because it acts as three dimensions of scales going from one extreme to the other, and then there are four cultural types that fall within those different dimensions. Those four cultural types are clan, adhocracy, market, and hierarchy, while the scaling dimensions are focus, structure, and means ends. Focus include criteria that range from an emphasis on internal capabilities, integration, and unity of process to the external orientations, while structure acts as an umbrella over criteria that range from flexibility and discretion to standards that emphasize stability and control. And then means ends consist of these behaviors that come from the values and beliefs. The means being the mechanisms through which culture types relate to desired ends or effectiveness criteria. All organizations have an organizational culture, whether they actively seek to establish one or not. Determining what a good culture is another highly disputed area of the field, but there are some similar sentiments that are shared about what might be considered good, and I brought them here for you today. An excellent first step to developing a good or strong culture is simply by defining what that organization's culture is, by leadership putting a name to the values held and documenting them to guide the organization's decision in line with their strategic goals. This offers a way to provide a map, and without that map, organizations might get lost or they might not make decisions that match both what their culture is trying to represent and what the organization's strategic goals are. Culture acts interdependently with strategy, structure, leadership, and high performance work practices within an organization. It is essential to examine all of these linked factors, as looking at only one or a few of these factors will leave a piece missing from the puzzle. Now, we do know that a strong culture both has a high level of consensus or agreement of what the values are, along with a high level of intensity or strong belief around the most valued norms. Because every organization desires a unique combination of these values, and how strongly the individuals in an organization believe those values varies, it's not exactly enough to identify an organization with a strong culture and just list out its components. Two organizations can technically share the same core values, but one might have a strong culture and the other one be weak. And this can stem from various reasons. There might be a strong consensus on what the values are, but if they're not strongly believed, then the culture will be weak. Some strong sense of willingness to adapt must also be found within an organization in order to create a positive impact. Now that we know what a good organizational culture looks like, let's talk about how we create a good culture and what might lead to a bad one. Organizational culture exists on both the individual level and the organization level. When trying to create a good organizational culture, or at the very least prevent creating a bad one, we must consider both levels and what outcomes of these each might be. At the individual level, some effects we might seek to improve are job satisfaction, organizational engagement, and retention. On the organizational level, some factors might include improving financial performance, improved organizational performance, and creating an ethical culture. Let's talk job satisfaction. It's going to be really important to align employee values not only with the values of the company, but companies should also seek to align employee values with those employees' job duties. When employees feel what they're doing aligns with their values, an increase shows up in job satisfaction as well as retention. Additionally, when employees feel supported in their work environment, this is shown to increase engagement and trust. Factors of a supportive culture in this study include two-way communication, shared decision-making power, embracing diversity, and the value of employee work being understood. Now, how do we improve organizational engagement? Organizational engagement often positively impacts an employee's level of adaptability. A positive culture can foster this. All organizations must make changes at some point. When that change occurs, maintaining a positive, engaged connection in an organization is critical and often challenging. Creating that engagement can be fostered by making the employer's state of work well-being fulfilling, positive, and motivational. When you direct the employee's cognitive, emotional, and behavioral state in this way, you offer them a route toward desired organizational outcomes. Study results suggest that it ultimately benefits organizations to create a positive culture and ensure employees remain engaged in their work. Studies have shown that there's a correlation between culture, individual values, and retention. When organizational culture and company values are considered in hiring practices, finding employees whose personal values match the organization and their job becomes more manageable. This can improve productivity, reduce recruiting costs, and help develop the organization on a path to success. Organizations can retain talented employees and can reduce costs even further because one great worker's productivity can often be more than two mediocre ones. Some organizations will use their culture to foster loyalty among their employees and encourage the value of long-term commitment. Other organizations that don't focus on their culture on nurturing positive attitudes or are too weak to do so often promote withdrawal from the organization and see higher voluntary turnover levels. The organizational culture created can have a strong influence on job attitudes and behaviors in the workplace, which can either spell success or failure depending on how the organization chooses to prioritize. Now, on an organizational level, let's talk about how culture can improve financial performance. Strong cultures promote routine adherence and uniformity in behaviors. They are streamlined towards one goal and less prepared to adapt in dynamic situations. However, strong cultures can also emphasize adaptability to counteract this. Those who do and have a high cultural consensus will see a better financial performance long term than those who do not have either or both of these factors. Culture can influence an employee's organizational commitment, and as a result, increased commitment benefits the organization's overall performance. An organization will ultimately perform better when its employees are adaptable to change. This can be fostered through positive organizational culture and is not entirely dependent on the employee's personality. When managers actively seek to promote adaptability to foster a positive change using positive psychology, this trait comes more quickly in the overall culture. Some examples of utilizing positive psychology are encouraging participation, role clarity, and optimism. Positive psychology is proven to enhance organizational performance, benefiting the employer, managers, and the company. Creating an ethical organizational culture can lead organizations to increase performance and long-term success. Promoting an ethical culture can be done through visible and tangible items in the workplace, such as a code of ethics, training, and posters. Creating an ethical culture may result in employee efficiency, positive strategies implemented, attracting superior employees, and reducing turnover. When trying to promote an ethical culture, leaders need to require internal alignment. This is critical to enabling effective decision making, positive performance, and positive results. When there is no internal alignment, an organization might experience adverse behavior from employees. While there's no doubt that far and away the benefits of good organizational culture will typically outweigh any costs, there are some risks associated with trying to implement an organizational culture. When executed incorrectly, a weaker culture may arise than previously existed. Companies often use surveys to develop culture, improve engagement, and reduce turnover. However, surveys can often be a double-edged sword if not wielded correctly. One of the benefits of surveys is that they are a great way to read employee intention versus their actual behaviors. However, if there's no action taken or feedback given after completing the survey, employers might find there are more engaged, higher performing employees becoming disgruntled and leaving. When employees see feedback or action due to the survey they took, this is an encouraging measure, and employers often see positive organizational development and a better culture. Employers are finding that as personal survey usage increases, the lower percentage of responses are being given. This low response rate risks the credibility of the answered surveys. This is otherwise known as non-response bias. The large share of personnel who do not answer surveys is often not of the same mindset of those who do. This makes surveys present a misconstrued image of the organization's overall attitude. Unfortunately, after the initial survey, resurveying is often the best way to determine organizational development, and the non-response bias can be damaging to that value. Another risk to culture can be when a company creates their values, but the leadership doesn't adhere to them. CEO wrongdoing can play an incredibly damaging role to the organization, both internally and externally. Senior management acts as role models for the employees, so an organization's culture ultimately comes from the top down. If employees see their managers or the CEO working unethically or not according to the stated values, this indirectly shows them that ethics and values don't matter. This results in a weak, negative culture that can damage the organization's foundation. Finally, let's briefly compare research results on culture in different industries. Organizational culture can manifest itself differently depending on the industry lens it's being examined under, though there are similarities across the board. Some studies have explored organizational culture's benefits in different industries and where those benefits typically show themselves. Today we're just going to be looking at educators, healthcare workers, and PR professionals. In education, research has found that schools' organizational culture plays a significant role in measuring teachers' work engagement. Modern organizations typically prioritize managing their human capital, and the human capital needs to be engaged in order to perform optimally. Organizational culture offers a way for educators to provide a competitive advantage in the field. This is true for any industry, but particularly in a field where compensation is not the employee's primary driver. Research conducted in the healthcare industry shows that performance is enhanced by cultural change as long as the following factors were true. A discernible culture exists. The nature of the culture influenced the performance. Culture can be changed. Cultural components could either be positively or negatively affect the culture that was identified. Strategies that impact the formation of beneficial cultures can be developed, and such benefits would outweigh any consequence. For PR professionals, culture hangs heavily on their leaders' shoulders. Part of the research done to examine culture in this environment relied on the specific leadership type in this industry. The most critical factors of solid leaders for PR professionals includes providing a compelling vision for how communication can help the organization, have active involvement in the organization's strategic decision-making processes, and possess strategic communication knowledge. Leadership isn't the only important factor, however. Organizational conditions such as engagement and trust play substantial roles in creating job satisfaction. Presenting a supportive culture and an effective communication leader can also enhance this. When it's all said and done, culture is a diverse and palpable force that the true essence eludes even the most well-versed researchers. It is easier to see the results culture creates than how to make it from scratch. Some common factors are observed repeatedly in successful, strong cultures, such as defining the culture and values, aligning those values with those of employees and their tasks, creating high values of consensus of those values, and high levels of intensity of belief in those values. Additionally, promoting adaptability and having a strong belief in that trait can set an organization up for success even when they face trials and tribulations. Strong cultures promote increased job satisfaction, improved engagement, reduced turnover, and improved financial and organizational performance. Keeping an eye on the risks of an organizational culture is also essential. Conduct surveys only if you have the means and desire to provide feedback and action from the results. Additionally, if you go to the trouble of establishing values and culture, hold all of your organization's members to those standards, even the senior management. Though culture looks slightly differently across industries, some general guidelines stand just about anywhere they're implemented. Thank you all for being here today and watching my presentation. I have been completely honored to have been part of the Presidential Honors Program, and I hope that today you learned something about organizational culture.